What's going on? It's Jamie Daire here from Sprangboro Sessions. Burrow Sessions. Woo! I just wanted to take a couple minutes here and just kind of gab a little bit to everybody how I've been doing. Been putting the pool in this week. I think my Fitbit yesterday said 35,000 steps or something. It's kind of ridiculous, really. Um, yeah. Other than that, just been kind of hanging out. Um, Trying to figure out what I was going to talk about, and it's funny when you're actually sitting here. You're like, all right, well, you can talk about this, you can talk about that, you can talk about this, you can talk about that, and then I'm like, I don't know, I can just talk about anything or nothing. And then I was like, oh well, maybe I should give it a name. So one of the names I thought would be cool would be "It's Raining Podcast and Dogs" because of the play on like podcast and cats and dogs. But I was like, oh, that's kind of dumb. And yeah, so today is July 16th. It's 7:10 p.m. Which today is a Thursday. Tomorrow it's going to be a pretty good day at work, I'm sure. Just like every day is just the fucking greatest day of my life. And I'm very thankful for my job, and I'm very thankful for all it's done for me and my family. And yeah, I would never knock anything like that. Couple things I want to bring up today. Started doing some reaction videos again. Finally figured out in Streamlabs OBS um, that there's a difference between streaming bitrate and a recording bitrate and file types. I won't get into that. If you're curious, look it up on YouTube like I did. Um, yeah, I am very thankful for these last couple days, and very thankful that that I'm here with my family and that we're safe. We're protected by you know uh, hopefully making good choices. I know I've been trying to do the best that I can every time I go anywhere, including to work. Um, but yeah, it's a scary world out there right now. As we all know, it comes as no surprise to anyone. You can't probably go anywhere in the world without them talking about COVID 19, um, which is fine. Um, when you look back, we started doing a podcast, Sprangboro Sessions. You can find it out here on YouTube. Um, Under youtube.com/ Lost Not Fallen, I believe. We also have it on Facebook, which is facebook.com/ Sprangboro Sessions. It is on SoundCloud under soundcloud.com/ Sprangboro. So people keep asking me, so Sprangboro, what's that mean? Well, I live in a little town. It's called Springboro. Uh, Moved here a few years ago with my wife. This is where she's from, and it's not too far from my hometown. So yeah, we looked at the house. Uh, I remember it very well. Chuck Broad, he was our realtor at the time, uh, and the only realtor we've ever actually had to be able to buy a house with. But uh, Chuck had contacted. Actually, I contacted Chuck, I believe, because at the time when I was looking at a house, I was living in Springfield, and uh, for what my wife was paying in rent and I was paying in rent, figured it would be best for us to just, buy a house for, our relationship and see what happens and give it, 100%. And yeah, so we bought a house, and we've been doing just that since we bought it. And long before, it's been awesome. Um, we have a daughter. She's 6. She'll be 7 next month. And let's see here. She's definitely changed my life. She's changed my wife's life. I know that. And she impacts so many people around. But to get back to the story, is that Chuck Broad, I was interested in buying a house. I had been approved to get a loan, so I contacted him because I knew he had helped um, my sister and some other family members look at houses. So we went and we looked at this one house, and it was pretty nice. It was a little higher than we wanted to pay, um, but it wasn't a bad house at all. But it didn't have certain things that we were looking for, like the one we bought. So that brings us to this house here. When we looked at the house, Chuck, we walked in the door, and Chuck showed us, around, and we went down in the basement. It was a little like not damp, but you could tell it was like a kind of a country house. Um, it was like I don't know if they call it a finished basement or not. Probably not because it only had dry lock on the floor, and but it was still kind of like a dungeon kind of feel, which is has changed because we've made it habitable and we cleaned. Oh my gosh, it's so long it took to clean that basement. Um, had to dry lock the other room, but just like any house, you get it and you just fix those same. But when we bought the house, we looked at the garage. I love the garage. It had a two-car bay, like the two-bay car garage, which was something that I have never had in my life was a garage. Um, and a bonus to the garage is it had a big loft above it. Um, and when we looked at the house and we were looking around, um, I told Amber, and I was like, listen, I really like this house. And Chuck was looking around and he's like, well, he says, well, you do music. Maybe you could do something with the loft here. I was like, yeah, maybe I could, because music's been a big, giant part of me for my whole life, honestly. But yeah, so let's fast forward a little bit. Went through some things to get the house. They had to put a new receptacle in. Sorry, I'm tired. It's almost my bedtime. But it needed a receptacle put in to pass the inspection. And anybody that's gone through the house buying process knows that it's a hurry up and wait. It's a pain in the rear end. But yeah, so after we bought the house, Amber and I we were talking. I was like, I want to turn the loft into a recording studio, and it took a pandemic. It took some time, some money, and 4 years. But yeah, it led me to what we call Cosawago Studio. Um, Cosawago Studio is a thought, and before it had a permanent home in the loft, it was what I called it in my basement. There's a Cosawago bottoms. When I looked it up, it had to do with Indians. I didn't really look all that in depth. Here, I guess I can look it up while we're here. Um, but I thought the name Cosawago, it was very unique to the area. It was very unique to me being here, and because there's of course no studio here, um, and anything like that because this town is very small, which is why we were glad that we bought it because I knew we would be able to have a pretty cheap taxes and stuff like that. Um, let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and read the excerpt from this page here as soon as it loads. Um, but yeah, so Cosawago bottom. This right here is from AUD as in dog U, B as in boy, ON.org. So that's what is that? Udubon or Audubon. I don't know. I'm sorry. But yeah, it says Cosawago Bottom is a north-south riparian corridor approximately 16 miles long and 1 mile wide from Meadville north to the headwaters of Cosawago Creek. The IBA is bounded on the west by Route 98 and encompasses Cosawago Creek, which is a tributary of French Creek and its west branch, and adjacent wetlands and low uplands. The creek is a low gradient, meandering stream in a glaciated outwash valley and is subject to considerable water level fluctuations. This creates a bottomland situation where inundation of the floodplain is a common occurrence. Much of the site is heavily vegetated, forested wetlands. Without getting further into that, there's a lot of uh, it shows that the there's a lot of bird watching and things like that. I apologize for my distraction. It comes up here from Forbes. Second stimulus check income limit will likely be higher than $40,000. because they're talking right now in real time about a second stimulus check. Um, so to anybody that is uncurrent with the current times, for whatever reason, a few months ago we got a stimulus payment because we've been going through the COVID-19 mandatory non-essential business lockdown, and everybody's familiar with it right now. But this is, if you listen to this in 20 years from now and we make it through, or they find a vaccine or whatever. But so there was a stimulus check, which was $1,200 per adult over 18, I believe. Um, and it was, uh, I can't remember what it was per child, maybe $400 or something like that. But anyways, so they're talking about a second wave of a stimulus check, which even for an essential worker like myself, I don't like to use that term as in bragging, saying, "Oh, I matter," because everybody matters. But I work in healthcare, which was my choice. It's something that I signed up for 3 years ago, just about. And when I took that job, I never, ever thought anything like what's going on in the world right now could have physically, or even even imaginary, could have happened. But when I took the job at the hospital, I was looking to just change my life and find some, you know, a bigger, a bigger entity than myself and than my day to day at the time. But yeah, so the second stimulus check would be nice because you look at the people that are collecting unemployment. All right. So whatever they get plus $600 extra a week. Um, a lot of people were refusing to go back to work because they were making more money on unemployment collecting an extra $600. Um, but so I was lucky. I was able to collect my check. Well, I also paid all my bills. We also had to provide for our family. We had to pay our bills, provide food, gasoline, your typical cell phones, and other things. Your internet, which everybody had to have. For the most part, just because it's industry standard nowadays. But people, they were home so much more, so the internet was not necessarily dogged down, but because I didn't notice a difference, but so many more people were sure to have it because they were watching more TV or watching more Netflix or doing more online shopping or uh, whatever. But the second stimulus check for us average person would be nice because it would be nice to have that money to help put a little bit of a cushion because um, when you're used to making extra money doing side jobs or you're used to making extra money in the entertainment business, going and doing things for donations and things like that, and then you're no longer getting them, that one hits you, you know, uh, in the wallet, so to speak. And, you know, so for anybody that was affected like that, it would just be really good to have that for your average person. And I mean, all those people that collected, I'm not knocking you guys. I don't blame you. I would do the same thing if I could have. But you also deserve something else to help, because I know, what is it, another week, 2 weeks, they're gonna, turn that off. So people will have to try and, get back to work. It's a double-edged sword, as they call, the phrase. Um, I won't get into that because I'm gonna save it for the cast. But yeah, so Cosawago Studios, getting way back to the point at hand, was when I was trying to think of a name for the studio. That was just kind of what I went with, Cosawago. And so Sprangboro Sessions, the way that was started, um, was me talking to my friends. Actually, Jimmy. Scott, all these guys at work, and just my personal friends, they'd be like, "Oh, check out the Joe Rogan podcast, or check out this podcast, or that podcast, or this podcast, or that podcast." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, sure, sure, sure," because I my mind, all I was thinking about at the time was just, recording music. I had to learn everything I could about recording music because when I dive into something, I want to dive in it and until I get completely disgusted and sick of it, and then I'll move on to something else. But so they kept saying to check out the Joe Rogan podcast and a couple other ones. And finally, one day I broke down and I went ahead and listened to a couple podcasts. I was like, wow, like I'd never actually heard a podcast before. And it was really awesome when I was looking them up because then you start to see all this information that you would not normally think about or you would not normally be that intimate, if you will, with some of the people uh, that it just blew me away. Um, and I've always enjoyed talking to people. Um, I just love people. Um, People, they inspire me every day. When I walk around work or around anywhere, and I'm always like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I poke the dare, and I like to jab at people, not in a negative way, but I like to make sure that I say hi to people or make them laugh, even if it's only for a second. I've always been like that. So, uh, I thought, how cool would it be to try my own podcast? But I didn't want to necessarily do it by myself, so I was shooting it by, off like the thought about it to a few people for months, and one of those people is TJ Otto. Um, TJ has stood beside me every single podcast that I have been a part of so far, except for the one I'm doing right this moment. Um, that guy, he has always been here for me, and you find out who your friends are is what they always say, and that like there's a song by Tracy Lawrence, and it doesn't mean that 100%. And TJ Otto, a million nice comments about him would just not be enough. But I'll go into stories about him here in a little bit. But so him and I were talking, and I'm like, yeah, how cool would it be to do this and that? And he said, well, just do it. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to do it. He's like, okay. And I'm like, so yeah, I guess I would just need to figure it out. And so I started diving in and reading things and reading forums and watching videos on YouTube. And he was doing some also, in between things that he had going on with his life and his job and uh, yeah, and it just never happened. It just never happened because it required a lot of focus and a lot of things to really make it, go into full bloom, so to speak. And I remember right before this whole COVID-19 pandemic, let's say January through March, um, we were working, I play in a country band. We're called South of 90. You can check us out on Facebook or YouTube and all kinds of stuff. But South of 90, we had added probably 10 new songs to our sets. And we played four of them a night. And we were just starting to, get through most of the list together uh, and in the learning phase. And then we were watching the news, and it was just like, my goodness, this pandemic is crazy, and it's coming. Like it is coming to it is leaving China or wherever. It's not my business just yet. I'm not. I'm no professor. I'm no scientist. I'm just your average Nacho, um, going through life, uh, just trying to make the best of every day. And yeah, so when the COVID-19, really was getting ready to shut us down, like we were playing a show and like the country band, and they were talking about how it's coming and how the bars, they're going to end up shutting the bars down and they're going to shut this down and they're going to shut that down. And then all of a sudden, bam, it came across, the news uh, that it was coming into our area and our state. And we were all like, wow, this is really happening. This is definitely not a joke. This is really, really happening. At the same time, I was driving to work in my GMC Terrain, and on my way to work, I smacked a deer unintentionally. I was going 60 miles an hour, which might sound fast to some people, but this is country roads, and the speed limit's 55. You got your grace of 5 miles per hour or whatever. It was super early. It was probably 5 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, so I hit a deer and it it totaled my GMC Terrain, um, which would have been I believe my third deer, or yeah, my third deer hit. Second car of that I had an HHR that I had ran into a deer after we bought this house. Um, I ran into one deer. It bent my everything in the front. I got it fixed over just outside Albion, Edinburgh, Donch Auto. Kudos to Dan. I'm sure I could tell you a million stories about him, but yeah, he helped me out a lot, and he that's what he does by trade. So uh, I, he fixed the car, and then I hit another deer and totaled that one. Then I got this GMC Terrain. I had it for like 2 years or so, and then I hit another deer, and then the moral of all that is that so here we are, March 14th, I guess, and I'm like, okay, I need a car to get back and forth to work. They're getting ready to shut our area down. Um, what am I gonna do for a car? So I'm freaking out. Freaking out. I end up getting my car at Keitlinger Auto. They're not sponsoring me or anything, but the experience that I had there throughout everything was amazing. They were helpful. They were very personable. They made you feel like a person. Um, so it was a really great buying experience, and I would definitely buy another car from them again in the future. But so I was supposed to play an acoustic show on March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day, um, for my um, for a bar, you know, down the road called Springboro Inn, and obviously it was getting shut down. So obviously I knew I wasn't going to be playing this acoustic show, which I was very disappointed in, but at the same time I was kind of relieved because I just it wasn't putting in the time to learn a bunch of songs and to practice songs and stuff because you just get worn out from your day to day life, or you come up with a million excuses. Ding ding ding. Um, but during that time frame, uh, so much was going on with the COVID-19 and uh, my job and my friendships with people and my family and things. It was just like I wasn't setting down the time, so I was not overly disappointed to not play the show on my end, but I was disappointed to not be able to play the show because I really wanted to do that for my friend Jimmy. Um, but yeah, so getting back to the story at hand, I bought my car on the 16th, which is Monday. They shut everything down like that day, the next day. Car like being car dealerships, everything. It was craziness. Everything just happened to fall into place, and so we're like, all right, well, we're going to be sitting around doing not too hell of a lot for a little while. Not sure how long, but so I was talking with TJ and Scott and Jimmy and uh, a couple of guys, and yeah, what it come down to is I was like, well, I guess now if I ever had an opportunity to do this, to make a podcast, now would then, of course, is what I said would be the time. So yeah, I have all kinds of recording software. I have recording equipment and mixers and microphones and stuff because of playing in a band. Pardon me. So basically, I just had to figure out how to get it all to work together. And so TJ and myself and Scott and a couple other guys, Bobby, my buddy Bobby, we had talked about it, and we were like trying to really find ways to do it. And of course, you got to sit around and you got to think of a name. And for me, I'm not gonna, I wouldn't say that I'm complex. Unfortunately, I suffer from overthinking every single thing. I overthink. A blessing and a curse. Um, and so I knew the name Sprangboro had popped into my head because of Springboro. And so I suggested it to the guys, and I bounced it off a few people, see what they think. They're like, oh, okay. I was like, but it's got to be more than just Sprangboro. Because if you wanted to do like little podcast off of whatever for example, Joe Rogan, how he's got JRE, which is Joe Rogan Experience, which if you haven't checked it out, you should definitely check it out. He's on. I go through Podbean right now to listen to him, but I know a lot of friends that are checking him out on YouTube and Stitcher. Um, they're checking him out on what is that? Apple Music or whatever it's called. And yeah, so he has JRE, which is Joe Rogan Experience, which the experience portion became. I believe he said he took the name, uh, was inspired by uh, Bob Marley. So, anyways, Joe Rogan Experience, and then he has his uh, the thing for the fights, which he calls a companion. So the companions are part of the Joe Rogan Experience. So there's like Joe Rogan, there's Joe Rogan Experience, and then there's this companion. So I was thinking about all these things, and so I'm thinking, all right, so I don't want to call it just a Sprangboro live or a Sprangboro bit or a Sprangboro solo or Sprangboro this or Sprangboro that. And session just came in to play. Honestly, I know I remember batting the name back and forth, um, but I can't remember who it was that really made me think about it and solidified in the mind. But so then Sprangboro Sessions was born, the name, and then we had to actually sit down and record. So that is where it got very interesting, and it's still to today very interesting trying to do that and figure it all out. The audio and the video and doing them all together, and it makes you really appreciate like Joe Rogan's experience, and makes you really appreciate some of the other ones out there that are really popular. Um, I know there's something about uh, it's like Barstool something or other. I can't remember right off the top of my head. But then there's like the daily. There's so many podcasts out there. So many. You can find them on so many different types of topics or religions or whatever. And that very very impressed me and inspired me. Um, so yeah, so we got together, and at that time we had to figure out how we were gonna record them. So Zoom, all of a sudden, never heard of it before. Never heard of it. Never once heard of Skype. Used it a handful of times. Um, there's so many things I could talk about going into all that. But long story short, so there was Zoom. And I had asked TJ and the guys, I'm like, have you guys used it yet or tried it? And Scott had said that he had just installed it for his daughter's. for school, and TJ had said he'd heard about it. Bobby had installed it for to get on there and talk. Um, I'm pretty sure the very first episode was Scott, uh, Bobby, TJ, myself, and I can't remember if Jimmy had been a part of that just yet or not. Um, but yeah, so the very first episode, we get rolling. We finally get everything set up with Zoom. We finally get on there, and we're like, "Holy crap, we're doing this! We're all here." Uh, Bobby is like there, and then he's like, "Oh, I can't. I'm not here. I'm not there. Uh, I gotta go. Gotta take care of business." And that was it. It was the very first minute, 5 minutes into the podcast. Bobby's gone. We're all looking around each other, and I'm like, "Okay, then." Well, we just kept going, and we had joked around, and we were talking about the name. And Scott, I remember Scott said something about uh, the name Sprangboro Sessions, and he's like, "Oh, so what are we calling it now? Sprangboro Sessions or whatever." I'm gonna pull it up here just because memory's serving me incorrectly right now. Let me find it. Uh, and the reason why I'm going to bring this up is this is the latest, very latest intro that was made on 4th of July. The intro was made by David Zimmer. Um, his stage name is Top Shelf. Um, he's 6'5". The most amazing and gentle souled person that I've probably ever met in my life. He's just awesome. I love that guy. I love what he stands for. I love who he is. But he, makes beats and stuff. And he was telling us, I was like, well, what would be really cool if you could make a beat for the podcast. So if you listen to the first podcast or whatever, we didn't really have one. So I'm going to play you what I have here.
Spring.
Turn it down a little bit. Yeah, so David presents this to me, and I was like, dude, that is beautiful. Like, how cool is that? That this guy is believing in this idea of doing this, and actually David Top Shelf. Oh my God, when they were first telling me about podcasts, he was also telling me about podcasts. I'm sorry I didn't bring that up sooner. Uh, but he was telling me about this podcast he was watching on YouTube where these like guys get together and they just talk for like 4 hours, just getting together and talking about it. And he's like, I watched so many episodes and I really love it. And I'm thinking in my head, at the time he was telling me about it, I'm like, who would want to sit and listen to people talk for like 4 hours about absolutely nothing? Because I was naive and I didn't really heed the advice of Dave or these other people. But uh, the very first episode was very special. The audio was all over the place. Bobby had left, but the guys, when we were there, it was just really awesome to do it. It was scary. I've been playing shows. We played like, I don't know, I don't even know how many shows. But doing the podcast in front of absolutely no one was more intimidating and more scary because it's more intimate. It's like you're actually a part of it. And that's why I've grown to love them. So, excuse me. And, yeah, so then we had some people come and go. Uh, not nobody's gone permanently. It's just like any other podcast. People like we're in July right now. We started the podcast back in March. People live their lives. People are busy. Jimmy's been very busy. Jimmy, he works out all the time. He's very hardworking musician, very hardworking employee, very hardworking son. He's just such a great guy, and he has not been on in many episodes. Um, we talk about it all the time. And he's like, he said, one of these days it's going to be raining out and I'm going to have a rest day. And I'm going to hope to be on there soon. And I'm ready for that. Scott, to anybody that's followed the podcast, Scott was on there all the time until after he was, uh, you know, because at first it was he was keeping his distance from his children, not because he didn't want to be a part of their lives, or but because he was concerned about their health and concerned about getting them, the potential, the typical COVID stuff. You don't want to get your loved ones sick. You don't want to get sick from people, so you got to make your circle really small. Um, and with his father, who had just had, it around that time frame had heart surgery. Um, he just did not want to take any chances, and that's why he hasn't been on there. I'm sure he will be soon enough. Um, we talk about it all the time at work and stuff, and he's always like, "Oh, I'll tell everybody I said hi." But yeah, so Springboro Sessions was then born, and then after the first couple podcasts, in one of our good friends, Ty, who lives in Illinois, we've been gaming, like video gaming, for years and years and years and years and years and years together. TJ, Ty, myself, on that particular group of that clan or whatever, um, video game clan, which was, I believe, Hater, H8TR or something like that. We were all much younger then, and yeah, so Ty, why he had mentioned about it, and we had talked about it, and invited him to be on the show, and he got on there, and he's been on there most of the episodes, and it's been awesome having him on there. Then there's Jerry Jasper. Jerry Jasper is one. He's a pretty cool guy, to say the very least. He I played video games with him and this guy Justin Pipkin, um, Ron, Big Jones, and all them. Um, you know, they were the first group of people I played video games with, and online, like Call of Duty, I should say, my first Xbox friends. Um, but Jerry has always been such an inspirational person. He has a different outlook on life compared to a lot of people. A lot of people see the negative in everything, and Jerry has always, as long as I've known him, he's always just been like that happy-go-lucky guy that just wants to inspire you to be more than you were, the day before, and wants to inspire you to push you to be more in that moment, in the next moment, the following moment, and he just when we were playing and we were talking about the podcast, I was like, well, I'd love to have you on there sometime, and he's like, yeah, that'd be cool. I'd like to try that, And as soon as he got on there, um, it was clicking. We were all just vibing, off each other. Uh, Springboro Sessions has been a blessing to me throughout this whole COVID. Uh, when we were first, I think it was the first podcast. When we were diving into the content, because anybody that's ever done a podcast, you are doing a whole lot of bullshitting. You're finding like a couple key points, and then you're not necessarily using fillers, but you are trying not to use the words ahs and ums and hmms, and you don't want a bunch of dead air, and you don't want to step on people's toes and be rude when they're trying to talk, and like there's just a whole lot of things going on. Excuse me. Uh, but we were rambling about the video games that we all play and stuff, and after we were done with that, like the first podcast or whatever, TJ is like, we should probably do a segment just about video games, but instead of a segment, maybe we should just do a whole nother podcast. And I was like, hell yeah, dude! Like I'm all about it. Like let's dive in and let's do it. Um, I was like, it's going to be your baby. It's going to be your thing, and I'm going to help you every way I can. Not because I didn't want to be a part of it, but because I wanted him to be able to learn about it himself because that's what he has always enjoyed doing. He also enjoys being challenged and whatnot. So we tossed around the names, and then it came with the name that he had come up with for a Facebook group that was middle aged gaming, which is middle aged AGED gaming. Sorry, not trying to be rude. What's up, kid? So this is Olivia. This is my daughter. She is my best friend. She is a big supporter of me and everything that I do. Um, uh, and it definitely goes both ways. Um, but yes, what's up, my love?
In 1 month, it's my birthday.
Your birthday is in 1 month. I'm aware of that. We actually, I was just talking about that. Um, so Olivia here, she is my everything, and yeah, she she makes me just proud to be a dad every day, and so that's a part of the reason why I wanted to start doing these podcasts because I wanted people to get to know me, uh, and more importantly, I wanted to get to know myself. It's like you have a filing cabinet and you have all these files that are just thrown in there, and and the only way to sort it is you have to literally pull little segments or the whole thing, and you have to sort it out, and that's what the podcast were starting to do for me, and still to today do that for me. Is I it's hard to not think of yourself. It's hard to not think of your own thoughts when that's all you're forced to hear all day. Um, so when we were talking, Jerry and Ty and TJ and all of us, it was very different kind of conversation. Maybe for them it was the same, and maybe for them it was normal, but for me it was different. I've always been a big jokester. I've always tried to be the life of the party. I always try to be that guy that that is out there and just everybody like when we play a game, I'd say something stupid, um, or less witty, just because I was trying to get a reaction, get a laugh, and so when we started doing the podcast, it was the very first time that I had to sit there and shut the hell up for once, and I had to really listen to other people's perspectives and their opinions because I was asking them their opinions, and I was asking them things that inspire them, and just like good conversation. But it was the first time that I had really sat down and actually listened and focused. I didn't let everything around me distract me as much as I normally do, and so that's helped me. I wouldn't say be a better person because I don't. I can't say I'm a better person or a worse person or nothing like that. I'm more aware. I'm more in this present moment, um, which my dad he always tried to get me to understand that living in the moment is a thing, and he bought me a book, The Presence Process, um, and I read some of it, but my attention span and my I'm trying to think of how to explain it. My attention span is not the strongest. It's gotten a lot better since podcasting. I promise you that. But reading is not hard for me. I love to read, but then I overthink everything that I'm reading, or I'm thinking about one thing, and as I'm reading this one thing, one word, then I start thinking about a whole different subject or a whole different topic. I'm just constantly going down from one rabbit hole to another rabbit hole, down another rabbit hole, and then before I notice, I've read the same paragraph 3 times because I was trying to make it sink in, and I just could not do it. And yeah, so the podcasts have just been a blessing to me. Um, I'm very thankful that everybody has believed in me and enjoy doing the podcast with me. Um, one of the in the earlier stages, David was talking about because he was like the first one to listen to the podcast, and he was like the first person that was coming up and saying that he listened to him and that was really telling us things that he liked. And and we're like, David, why don't you be on the podcast sometime? And he's been on it a couple times, and I'm gonna have him on here again soon. Uh, and it was really awesome. And I've had a couple people like, well, why don't you have David on there all the time? And uh, David has been such a supporter of the podcast that I don't want to lose the biggest fan we've ever had, if that makes sense. He's awesome, and we've also had on the podcast the most recent episode, Lindsay Weatherly. A brief summary of Lindsay is that she is my cousin. She is um, awesome. I love her to death. When we first got into doing the Zoom and stuff, her and her mother and myself, we were getting on and talking all the time. Then we were getting a couple of my other family members a part of it, and Lindsay was always like, oh, giving me her ideas of things to try, and finally one day I was just like, hey, do you want to be on the podcast? And she's like, yeah, sure. So, if anybody that followed the last podcast, she was on it, and sounds like she's going to be a more permanent resident on the podcast, which is very awesome. It was kind of sprung live stream, and they're like, oh yeah, she had brought up, she said, well, you guys should have a woman on there, like that lady from Ridiculousness or whatever it's called, and I was like, yeah, you are right. You want to have diversity, and you want to have that, and having a woman's perspective on everything that we've been talking about, I felt would really make us all get a better understanding. And it was just brilliant. I'm glad she brought it up, and I was like, yeah, please do. So, today's Thursday. We'll be recording on Sunday. I don't know who's going to be there. All I know is that we're going to be recording it. I'm going to send out the invites to everybody that I, generally always do, and then we'll see how it goes. Another reason why I don't have a whole lot of people on there all the time or anything of that is because as TJ always says, you only have so much bandwidth, or in your glass you have so much, and you don't want too many people talking all at one time, because that's when stepping on toes, or that's when those type of things. You don't want them to get. You want everybody to be heard, and that's why I want you guys to hear this. So you heard the very first Prime Bro session. So then David made one for Middle Age Gaming, and then he made this one.
Spray.
Session. Session.
So when David sent that to me, I was like, gosh, that is so good, man. I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much. And that, you use that for many, 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 many podcasts. And I love it. And David approached me one day. He's like, oh, I got this idea for a new intro. I'm like, David, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I like it. And, it's perfect. It's great. And I just don't know if we can do it better. Well, David had to prove me wrong. I guess that's what people do. Excuse me. And David proved me wrong. David sent it to me on the 4th of July. And I didn't listen to it that night. Um, so then when I popped it in, we were talking about work, and I was like, "Oh man, how cool would it be if you did like this or try that, or it'd be cool this." And then he apparently took a complete different concept and just ran with it. So when I listened to it, I was like, "Wow, that was amazing," and he just made a fool out of me yet again because I'm like, it can't get better than it already was. And he proved me wrong. And so, if you haven't checked it out or you have checked out the podcast, this is the latest intro. And TJ and myself and Scott were talking all at one collective time. And David apparently went back and took that snippet and he wanted it to have like an old record kind of sound and some other things. I'll have him, explain it to everybody the next time he's on the podcast. But this is Springboro Sessions intro, July 4th edition.
Yes. Springboro Sessions, we're calling.
Yes, Springboro Sessions.
Springboro, sorry.
Yes, Springboro Sessions. Springboro Sessions. Springboro Sessions.
How we doing, everybody out there? It automatically just hypes you, man. Like it makes them vibes. Just you're like, yeah, let's do this, And so the whole, intro had completely changed, and it was awesome. My babe, what's up? I can hear that. Is there something you want to talk about?
I'm sweating.
I'm sweating too. It's pretty hot.
I've been sweating for like 3 hours.
Wow, 3 hours. Is your air conditioner on in your room?
I think so. And my fan too.
So what did Daddy set up for you? Again, outside.
Oh yeah, I saw that. The pool.
The pool.
And I saw that you were actually filling it up with water because when I went to go wash my hands, it was not going.
Oh yeah, the water was not flowing very fast. That is correct. Um, so that story, as it goes, is we set up the pool for what, a week, Olivia?
We set it up for. It filled up for 3 days.
It filled up for 3 days. Yep, and then
We
we enjoyed it for what, 3 or 4 days or something like that.
yeah,
And then the rain came down,
and made it tilt.
and we felt that it was just unstable because we did not level it out. I guess that's a thing to do, is to do it the proper way, whatever. And yeah, so we, you know, Amber and Olivia and we had decided at that time that it was probably for the best that we let the water out and try it again. So yeah, Daddy set it up, leveled it out, had to buy some sand.
I thought you only used the dirt.
Nope, I went out and I bought sand to do it because I wanted it to be much better. So I went through and I got a bunch of the big rocks out. Actually, I rototilled half of it, like with my rototiller. That's the machine that Daddy does the garden with.
Yeah.
So I rototilled it, and then I took the sand, the bags of sand that I purchased from our local feed mill. Thank you again, by the way, because I knew they would have it. I just didn't waste my time trying to find it anywhere else because most places on anything you want like that would be sold out. So I took the bags of sand and I used it to tamper the ground with, and then of course I spread that on top. So yeah, I've been filling it. Got it all set up yesterday, and a couple more days and it'll be filled up. And
I'm pretty sure it'll be for 3 days because
it'll probably be 4 days this time because we're not going to be home as much to Can you please not do that?
Mhm.
Since we're not going to be home as much to be able to keep an eye on it. But yeah, so uh, I don't remember what I was actually talking about beforehand, which is fine. Um, yeah, so the reason why I'm sitting here talking to you guys today is I have a lot of time on my hands, and I really want to get much better at talking, if that makes sense. I'm good at it, but I really want to get better at commentating and um, like Joe Rogan. He inspires me so much. I don't want to be the next Joe Rogan or nothing like that, but I do want to try a couple of things he does just to try him and see what it's like to do that. And so podcasting has been great. Commentating that's not for me. Pardon me. Uh, but I have been doing a couple very. I think I've done like 3 reaction videos. Every time I go to record one, something's not right. Usually it's my video and my audio not syncing up. Uh, but I think I finally fixed that today. Um, and I just posted a reaction video before I got on to record this, and it was Rebel Yell by. It's a cover. It's a Billy Idol cover by. I believe the band was Otherwise. My buddy Dan Donch, suggested I listen to the song, so I figured what better way to listen to it than to do a reaction video. So I think it was I think it was my most successful reaction video so far, but my most fun one was the first one, which I did on, I believe it was Animals was the name of it or something like that. Jerry, had suggested. He actually has sent me another one since then, which I'm going to be doing probably tomorrow or Saturday because I plan on getting a couple of things knocked out. But I really wanted to take time and just kind of tell everybody why, what I'm doing and just say hello. So yeah, in the next episode of whatever the hell I'm going to call this, um, actually, I think I did come up with a name that I think is going to be very catchy and clever that I'm going to have to try after I'm done recording. But yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to everybody that's been, hanging out with me and following me. Sprangboro is a gamer tag that I changed, to, and Sprangboro is me theoretically because of that. Sprangboro Sessions is not me. Sprangboro Sessions is much more than myself. Sprangboro Sessions is the group of people that have been, a part of it. It is just as much them as it is mine. I do not take full credit for that um, because without them, it would be absolutely nothing. Their insights and their stories just makes me feel so damn good, and I just love learning about them as in their lives and learning their different perspective on topics and stuff, and I don't want to take away from them, but I also want to talk a lot about whatever the hell comes to my mind. So that's what's led us again to this here. Um, and I really hope you guys have enjoyed this, you know, new cast, so to speak. Um, this is more of an intro. I have no audio for it just yet. I will the next time. I will record audio and put it up. Please stop for 1 second. But yeah, so thank you very, 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 very much for hanging out with me tonight. Thank you for taking time out of your day to just give a listen to someone. Maybe you learn something. Maybe you have a question or or comments or any of that stuff. Please feel free to join the Sprangboro Sessions Facebook page. Uh, we don't have a whole lot of interaction on there just yet. Um, but if you do have things that you would like to suggest or comment or questions you want to ask or things you want, to be, maybe some reactions for the future for me, please feel free to drop it in the comments. Um, I hope you guys enjoy it, the podcast. Please subscribe uh, because that's how this works. Um, I also do have a Venmo, which should be down there um, at Sprangboro. If you want to make any type of a contribution or donation or whatever, you do not have to do it. You're not forced to do that. Uh, but it is appreciated because I'm going to be diving into content. I'm going to be playing my guitar, writing some more songs. I'm going to be learning some more songs. But I'm not playing shows for a while because we're locked down again. Content. That's where I'm at right now. Podcast, podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for sticking around. And we'll talk to you guys very soon. I promise. Peace out.
Peace.
Deuces.
Deuces.
That's right. Deuces. Did you say who's hanging out? This guy? Sure show.
Uh-huh.
That's,
Nuki Papa.
that's Nuke. He's the hairless, ballless wonder, Nuke. He is a neutered male. He is a Chinese crested. Yep. And so, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Deuces.